Good morning, GM to all of our Lucky Trader staff here. We're back for our second edition of the NFT Roundtable. We had a lot of fun last week, and we're trying to break down a pretty wild week in the macro financial markets, which of course trickles down into crypto and NFTs. Boys, how are we doing today, and how are we feeling about the markets?
Feeling better than the markets. The markets are quite shaky. It's been a roller coaster week, but excited to break it all down to you guys.
Yeah, I am excited as well. A reminder of what the roundtable is all about. We give you the serious news over at Lucky Trader, but when it comes to our personal opinions, we can have some pretty wild takes. So we started the roundtable discussions to have some fun while sharing our more personal views of the space, and we're bringing that same energy to the show. So let's get weird. Let's buckle up. Let our hair down. It's in the morning. We like to do this usually in the afternoon, but we're doing a morning session today due to some time constraints. So it'll be interesting, but let's have some fun here. So we're going to talk about the macro meltdown, of course, from the past weekend, Instagram sunsetting NFTs, and with March Madness kicking off this week, we're going to be doing a little NFT bracketology. So some fun there. A reminder, this is not financial advice. None of us know anything. And if you like this content, we do a roundtable article every week. You can find that on the Lucky Trader website. So we broke down a lot of the same topics that we'll be going over today in article format. So check that out. And without further ado, let's get into our first segment, which is the macro meltdown. All right, I want to give some context to that picture. Earlier in the week, we saw that Sesame Street was getting into NFTs with a Cookie Monster drop, and I love Cookie Monster, and so I was playing around with Dolly, and if you hadn't noticed, all of these photos that I use for these videos are from Dolly. So I decided to ask it to show what Cookie Monster would look like reacting to Bitcoin going up and the financial markets collapsing, and that's what it came up with. So I thought that was pretty cool there. So let's go over a little bit from the last week. It's felt like a year. We've all aged significantly, but we'll give a quick rundown of the events that started last Friday. So on Friday, we saw rumblings of a run on Silicon Valley Bank, causing crypto to tank. California regulators eventually shut down SVB, causing widespread panic and fears of contagion. It seeped into crypto there. Circle, which is the issuer of the USDC token, revealed it had significant funds with SVB, causing USD to depeg. So we saw that over the weekend. It was absolute chaos. Saturday morning, the situation stabilized a bit, increasing calls for the federal government to guarantee SVB deposits. So people were starting to calm down a little bit. On Sunday, we finally get the news that many expected. SVB depositors would be made whole by the Fed. We saw a huge rally from crypto led by Bitcoin and ETH. And also, all the primary crypto-friendly banks, including Silvergate, SVB, and Signature Bank, were all shut down in a one-week span. So a war on crypto taking place here. Yesterday, we saw a further fracture in the banking world. Credit Suisse, a huge bank, shares tumbled greatly amid concerns of a default. So we've got all of that in basically a week stretch here. It's a hell of a week for the macro. Through all of that, we saw a lot of euphoria in crypto earlier this week with prices absolutely surging. So it's a very strange dynamic. So it leads me to our first conversation here. A few questions for the group. How did you guys react to this past weekend's news? Did you make any moves? And what were your biggest takeaways for crypto and NFTs here? We'll start with Tyler.
I didn't make any moves. I was mostly just watching it play out. Any move I would have made likely would have been the wrong one. Like you've seen so many stories of folks who sold the USDC bottom and then tried to rotate to ETH and then just messed everything up. I certainly would have done the same. A few of my primary takeaways are, one, like clearly the U.S. government is coming after crypto right now. They're not even trying to hide it. It's just out in the open now. So there is absolutely a war on crypto. I think, to their detriment, I think that is making the crypto argument even stronger. And while it's likely in for some short-term pain and volatility here as we get through the next few months and years, I think the bedrock of why crypto exists, the erosion of trust in the traditional system, in the traditional banking system, is kind of reaching a tipping point. And I think that will be great for the macro crypto narrative over time. But that's going to take a little while to play out. So I think for starters, that was my major takeaway from the weekend.
Jason, any thoughts, or did you make any moves over this weekend?
No, I did not make any moves. I'm glad that I didn't. I sat through Terra's collapse, UST holder during that whole debacle. So nothing that happened with USD was really terrifying to me at all. It's $4 billion or whatever it was at risk is pennies compared to what Terra went through. I thought that the biggest takeaway from the whole thing was how well Circle and USDC responded to the situation. I thought actually that it was pretty much recovering and that they have provided a solution prior to the government even stepping in. And I think that the company would have been fine even if the government didn't step in. And I think that was like their first real test as are these assets actually 100% backed? And it seems to be that yes, they are. And that Circle will last long into the future. The problem is that the government's clearly coming on after on off ramps. And I'm not sure exactly how crypto responds to that. I don't think that on off ramps in the United States are particularly important for crypto in general. A lot of people already hold a lot of crypto, but it definitely would be easier to onboard new people, with those ramps. So we'll see what happens.
Another point I want to jump on from Jason there that the Circle did right, I think, is how they kind of transparently came out and addressed the situation on social media. I think one of the biggest risks that presented itself in this past week was how quickly information moves now in the social media era, and with digital banking now, how quickly these bank runs can happen just in the matter of minutes and hours. And of course, the same thing can happen in crypto. And when you're facing these critical environments, being able to come out and put messaging out there to reassure holders that you are in control or the details of the situation is increasingly important. And I think it's going to be a new trend we see for a lot of these companies, even for banks, to have more of a social media presence and conscious effort to put messaging out there in these times of crisis.
Yeah, it was a major missed opportunity for Circle not to tweet "steady lads." I thought that was.
Yeah, it was wild to watch it all play out on social media. I mean, it's moving in real time, and I feel like in our neck of the woods, we had so much early information compared to like what you see dropping on like the mainstream media outlets. Like on Sunday when I was at the airport, I heard people talking about it, and you see some of the base takes that we saw probably on Friday just trickling out to like the more normie mainstream culture there. So very interesting to see the type of information we get in the space. Logan, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to share. I thought it was a good segue into the NFT projects and their commitment to communicate based on everything that was happening with SVB. So I think Tyler's right. I think there's an obligation on all of these entities to communicate as effectively as possible and as quickly as possible. And we saw some of that for the good and the bad during the last week or so. Just personally, I was medium bored. I've learned at this point in time that, like Tyler said, I'm going to do the wrong thing, right? For the wrong reason, probably without really thinking. And so it's often best just to kind of give yourself a beat. I'm not a macro expert. Trying to think through all the second order, third order effects of everything that's happened here, I couldn't possibly do correctly. So.
I think Dee's put it well too. We mentioned this on the show earlier, but he said his advice from this weekend was to get high and close your computer pretty much until Monday, and that probably worked out pretty well if you did that. So,
good advice. Really quick, Ghost. Can I turn notifications on for when Logan becomes not medium board? I want to know about that moment. I want to know quickly when he is no longer bored and ready to act, because it means I need to be making some moves myself.
He has been medium board for a long time here.
Since I've known him, he's never not been medium board.
It's really the best way to be, in my opinion.
All right. I have a second question follow-up to some of that USDC talk. In Black Swan events, kind of like Celsius and FTX that we've seen earlier in the year, I felt like I was personally watching more from the outside. I didn't use either of those platforms. I wasn't really exposed to it at all, but USDC was kind of that first thing that I had a lot of experience with. That's like primarily the stable coin that I use to swap out of crypto. So it hit a lot closer to home here. So I'm curious if the weekend USDC crash kind of changed your guys' opinion of potential usage of stable coins or how you're handling that going forward. Tyler, or anyone who wants to jump in.
Sure. I mean, quickly, I think we've seen a little bit more erosion and confidence in stablecoin ecosystem. Certainly, I think Bitcoin and ETH were winners of that. We saw some rotation there Friday night, and even after kind of the circle dust was clear, I think we saw that in some of the price action this past week. So I think mostly Bitcoin is probably the big winner there, as what is considered to be the safest, most secure crypto asset, if you can use those words in crypto. So I think that's definitely a new trend and impact of this event.
Yeah, I think personally, the biggest way that FTX impacted me was that they had to change the Miami Heat's arena's name. But yeah, I use USDC rather frequently, and I would say there's less erosion of trust. I think actually the way that USDC and Circle handled the situation, that I trust fully that it is 1-to-1 backed by the US dollar, and that unless the government wants to completely destroy the US banking system, that Circle is rather safe to use.
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of the same thoughts. I was impacted by FTX. I think I lost like $1,600 to FTX, unfortunately, but not in particular too concerned about stablecoins moving forward, but am a little more tempted to shift the distribution of like my holdings towards like something like Bitcoin versus the stablecoin, as Tyler mentioned, as a result of some of this stuff.
Tying it back to NFTs a little bit, I think we've seen some rotation to more stable NFT projects. I think primarily CryptoPunks. I mean, CryptoPunks seemed to be the winner of this past week with everything deeply red on the board. Punks are in green and kind of grinding up. They're up at the upper end of that kind of stable range of 60 to 70 ETH here at 67. Seeing a lot more punk PFPs popping up on NFT Twitter recently. So they seem to be the big winner here.
Yeah, and I mean, that makes a lot of sense too, because there's no risk. They've had years to build the floor price. There's no execution risk, and punks are historically valuable regardless of what happens to NFTs in the future. Unless Ethereum is completely dead, then punks are worth money. So yeah, it's not the same case with even apes, which I would say is the second safest asset in NFTs, and especially not anything below that tier.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue into kind of the NFT impact that we saw here. And we saw crypto surge briefly earlier in the week, but NFTs have had a rough one. I'm going to pull up Tyler's note from his morning minute this morning. Here are some of the floor prices of some of these major collections here. It is getting pretty ugly. I'm going to read off his tweet too, because Tyler puts out all this great content here. It's been a rough week for NFTs. Trading volume at pre-blur season 2 levels. Unique traders at yearly lows. Mid-tier PFPs are down 10 to 30%. Checks are sub 1 ETH. And yesterday's Art Blocks Curated is trading really low. So it's kind of rough out there for the non-safety type projects that we were just talking about there. So I'm curious to hear what you guys feel has stuck out most to you from an NFT perspective during this volatile period. And who do you think the big winners and losers are?
I think it's super boring. Sorry, Jason. I think it's a super boring thing because Tyler just mentioned it, but I think the Punk's stability is probably like the biggest story here. Punk's Fidenza stability is probably the biggest story if you don't want to continue harping on the mid-tier erosion. And that's the thing that is just really like, this is a lot of strength. These are significant moves downward, 37%, 27%. I don't know, with everything else cratering around you for punks to be up in the face of all of it, it just seems like the biggest story by far.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that I'm not actively trading NFTs right now. And if you are, you should be very careful. I think CryptoPunks is the only thing that I would buy right now. I'm not going to because, I'm not #rich, but I also do think, though, that straight line bias is a real thing. I wrote an article on straight line bias during the bull run. Everyone said everything was going to 100 ETH. ETH was going to 10,000 and Bitcoin was going to 250,000, whatever. Straight line up, not going to happen. Straight line down to 0, also not going to happen. So I think some of these projects that saw significant declines, I think they can, rest relatively easy right now, knowing that Moonbirds are not going to go to 0 by next week. So it's going to be okay.
I had an interesting discussion over Twitter DM with Sam NFT Statistics this morning on this topic. Essentially, his thesis is, Blur and the Blur farming incentives greatly accelerated the downtrend in the PFP sector that we're seeing here. That likely would have taken place over months. It instead took place over a few weeks. The macro picture is a bunch of whale farmers are buying these PFPs who don't really want them. They just want them to make a quick flip or profit, or for farming rewards, and then they're selling them off because they don't want them and there aren't any buyers. I think this is where that's kind of like the quick technical analysis. The subjective analysis is, why are there no buyers? To me, that's because of a lot of the fumblings some of these PFP teams have made. And it just shows how high execution risk, how the concept of utility is one of the biggest risks in this sector. And I think it's a good chance some of these will be relegated to the low tier cool cat range, if you will. I don't think they're going to zero, but I don't think they bottomed. And Jason really makes the best point. This is why are you buying right now? Like, unless you really have a long-term horizon, if you have any type of short-term trading nature, you're kind of catching knives right now. Like, it's probably better just to wait to see some type of a turnaround and then maybe miss 10% off the bottom or so. I think that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
Also,
go ahead, Jason.
Just real quick, I want to defend the PFP projects just slightly. I do think that with the macro conditions, regardless of execution risk, like, it doesn't matter what these projects would have done this week, they were all going to see declines, like Punks being the exception, and certain like very low cap or low market cap projects that can see runs with relatively few buys. These mid-tier to high-ish tier projects were going to decline with SVB and everything that happened this week. So
sure, but Azuki and Bored Apes were down 6 to 10%.
Yeah,
and the others were down 20 to 40. So I think that is the difference. I do agree with you, but
there's probably some like more eloquently way to say this, but like there's some correlation to like luxury goods here, right? During markets like this, where the demographic of holders for something like Punks, like those people are rich, as Jason was alluding to, and like don't need to sell into this. Maybe I'm creating something that doesn't exist, but it seems like that's potentially a factor here. Is consider like the bags or the holder bags of these mid tiers, and like the erosion of money that comes. It's just kind of like a cascading thing that they almost you have to sell. Does that make sense? Am I making something up?
Yeah, I think it also it looks into the incentive perspective of people who bought CryptoPunks versus people who are holding these mid-tier collections. And you see Moonbirds and CloneX and Doodles. Those are primarily driven during the airdrop meta and by people who really wanted financial gain, where CryptoPunks originated almost as fine art, where like people just held them because they liked them. There was never any expectation of airdrops or financial incentives other than the holding the token itself, which I think is a huge psychological difference between the projects. And we talked a little bit on the Lucky Lead this morning, how I feel like there's no possible thing that these projects can do to appease the holders that are so underwater from these highs that we saw in the bull. Like, there's just nothing they can do outside of dropping ApeCoin or something like that, which is just not really feasible in this market anymore, to hold up the price of a token. It's just a mess, and I don't really see how these projects can really make their holders feel good about it again.
They need to restore pride, and I want to tie it back to Logan's luxury good analogy here. Like, people wear Gucci because like Gucci is cool. It has positive sentiment in at least some social circles, right? As a strong brand, you feel good wearing it. That was originally the idea of PFPs. Like, they made you feel good repping that project on Twitter, on other social media. The problem now is it doesn't feel as good anymore repping a lot of these projects.
I would say it doesn't feel as good anymore because we're not making money anymore. And I think most people got into this to make money, and it's not happening anymore.
I'm curious to hear Logan's perspective specifically regarding the Doodles drama that we saw today. Speaking of like these mid-cap PFPs, Doodles came out with some pretty strong language saying that they're not an NFT project anymore. They're building for the masses. And pretty much if you feel like you want to just be involved in the project for financial incentives, then you can get out. So as the Clay Maxi on the panel here, I would love to hear your opinion of where Doodles is heading right now.
Yeah, I think the message is right. Actually, I don't necessarily condone the way in which it was delivered or the kind of like the banter back and forth from Poopy. Like, I don't know, I'm not a super huge fan of that, but I do think it's right, and it speaks kind of to what Tyler was suggesting about like the need to shift away from a focus. I guess we're all saying it's like a focus on just financial incentives and shift. And I wrote about it this morning, but like this is an inflection point where like the holder demographic has to drastically shift now, just like what Proof did, right? Moving towards, hey, we're going to be focused on art, and you have people that were speculating on other things now, like, okay, we're done, right? Like this should be kind of a shed the people who aren't there for the right reason. It's weird to say that because I came here to make money too, right? And so I don't know. I think it was the right message. I'm not sure it was delivered appropriately. And that's perhaps like the best way to say it. These projects are all going to have to do different stuff. And so Doodles, Proof, whatever, whoever you are, like you're going to have to innovate and do different things than what the bull market allowed projects to do.
I think that I disagree almost completely. I think that if you bought into an NFT project, a 10K PFP collection, you bought sort of a stock. I mean, that's what it intended to. You gave someone money for them to build something, and that you should be rewarded along the way, the whole time. It doesn't become an art project after you made a shitload of money. That's dumb. If they do want to shift focus, I think Doodles 2, introducing that to new people, expanding the company to people who aren't interested in Web3 is important. But it should all tie back to the original Doodles collection, which they're not doing. They're basically just shitting on holders, and I don't think that that's right.
Yeah, well, they have suggested that they. So I don't disagree with your take, but they have suggested they will, right, bring value back to those holders, and that's a little bit where I'm kind of like, and I don't hold a doodle anymore, but like pro doodle in the sense that like you do need to give these people time and at least see if they can do that. But I think many people just don't expect for it to happen given all the delays the team's already shown and what have you. So I agree. You've shifted me a little bit there, Jason, but I do think we need to give them some time to potentially let these things manifest.
Yeah, I just think, just real quick, I just think that it's sort of like if you were Tim Cook, right? And someone bought an iPhone and then they started telling you how to run your company. You'd be like, you buy my product, screw off. That's Doodles too. But you wouldn't say that to someone who owns 1/10,000th of the Apple stock. That's the people who hold Doodles, the original Doodles. It's the one that funded your company to start with, and that you should treat them in a different manner than holders of other things that are basically products at this point.
Yeah, that's totally fair. That's definitely fair.
It was weird when you mentioned that people look at it as a stock. I think Gary Gensler actually came into the chat room. I kicked him out right away though, so a little bit worried about the securities talk there. And in terms of bringing value, we saw that they dropped the golden socks or whatever to people that burn socks. I'm just not sure that their idea of bringing value is going to be the same as a lot of people that are left holding a major bag there.
Yeah, and I think that's.
Go ahead, Logan.
I'm sorry. I think that's what Jason was just saying about listening to the original holders. I think that's been the biggest gripe here, is that there's a complete disconnect in what Doodles suspect is bringing value or adding value, right? And what the community suspects will add or bring value. And that's where there needs to be, like, for both the community to be happy and the brand to succeed, both participants there need to move closer to the middle. Will that happen? Probably not, based on Poopy's message. They're going to do what they think is right. So
yeah, good points. I think we could talk about these all day. I'm sure we will talk about Doodles in the future. This is not the last we've heard of them. There's always drama around these specific projects, it seems like. But we got to move on to our second topic, which was a big announcement from Meta and Instagram. All right, so we saw some pretty shocking news earlier this week. Meta announcing that it's winding down NFT support after launching it just 10 months ago. Meta's head of commerce said that the firm is still committed to ways to connect users with fans and monetize, with a particular focus on building payment rails and monetizing reels. The decision to scrap NFT support was met with a lot of criticism from the community. NFT artist Dave Krugman called it a short-sighted move, questioned why Meta quit before it even started. A lot of other people were very vocal about feeling like Meta kind of dropped the ball there. So I'm curious to hear from the panel. How are we feeling about this move, both for Meta themselves? It feels like, as a forward-thinking tech company, this seems like a very backwards move. So I'm curious if anyone has any thoughts on that move.
I mean, I have a few thoughts. Yeah, I think that companies within Meta's portfolio are still working on NFT technology. Obviously, they're tripling down on the metaverse, and they're going to continue building for the NFT and Web3 space. I just think that they're getting rid of NFTs on Instagram, which I do think is a bad move. Instagram's basically all fake. Everyone who uses Instagram just posts fake stuff. It's a way to get engagement for fake photos, and with things like Midjourney or whatever, you can now almost realistically create these photos, and in the future you'll be able to put yourself anywhere you want and post it from your living room. So I actually think an interesting use case for Instagram would be to use some sort of location-based or geotagged NFT to actually verify that these people are where that they say they are. And it would make Instagram less fake, but maybe that's not what they want. Maybe they just want, the engagement and the fakeness and all that is Instagram. So, yeah.
I think Jason makes great points. I think maybe more specifically on the situation, it's likely just tied to the order of magnitude of the users in the NFT ecosystem right now. Like, it feels so big to a lot of us because like we're living in this world. But how many daily active users do we have? Like 20,000. It feels like less. And Instagram is what 100,000x that. Just different orders of scale, and it just doesn't seem like we're still a pretty small fish on a short-term basis for them to go after. Now, to Jason's point, I don't think they're shelving their entire digital collectible NFT plans. This is more of a kind of a small, current roadmap change.
Yeah, I just think like it's not as big of a deal for us right now, like the NFT market, to speak for the NFT market, as a lot of people made it seem. Like this Instagram thing was great for the few artists who were able to drop. Things sold out like almost immediately, but generally speaking, it had almost no impact on the existing market. Of course, it could have onboarded many, many more people, but it likely wasn't going to do so in the iteration it was currently in, right? It's just dropping new projects to like botted, likely, right? NFT farmer bot type networks that were able to mint out in seconds. So I think it's less of a big deal than we've probably made it seem. And yeah, we'll see them again in some other way.
Yeah, the fact that, real quick, the fact that Meta is currently losing around $20 to $30 billion a year creating hardware for you to access the metaverse is much more important than the fact that Instagram is not going to sell NFTs anymore.
Yeah, I agree with all these points. I don't think that we've seen the last of Zuck in the space, even if it's called something else like a Zuck NFT, or he probably won't use NFT in it. I wanted to call out these two tweets that I thought were great. Seed Phrase immediately said, Instagram will be back next hype cycle, guaranteed. So he's of the opinion that this is just another company that's leaving when things are cold and will be back when things are hot. And Jack Butcher with a great one here, the Abacus sunsetting calculators, which I thought was a pretty great phrasing for how he's looking at the backwards move here. I'm curious. I'm going to tee up Jason for this one because I feel like you're a big macro thinker and you've also been very deep in the AI streets. I'm curious how this affects incorporating social media and NFTs together, and if there has been any good implementations of that so far, and how that relationship kind of evolves in the future. How do you envision that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'm actually not sure. I don't think that traditional social media companies are very well equipped to handle Web3 and NFT technologies. And so while I think Twitter will integrate to a certain degree, I think Instagram will reintegrate at some point in time. Facebook also. I think it'll be new social media companies that do this best. For example, I forget what they're called, Blue Sky, I believe, Blue Sky Social, which is Jack from Twitter, his next social media company that's basically going to be all Web3 and allow users to sort of set rules and parameters. So I think, yeah, once we see social media companies that sort of aren't companies anymore and sort of decentralized networks of people, that's the next step for social media, though. The problem becomes, how do I make money doing that? And the answer is probably that you can't. So someone who's mega rich has to do it just because they want to. And obviously Elon, after buying Twitter for nearly $50 billion, is going to fight against that as hard as he can. But I think ultimately that's where we land. And NFTs will be very important for that and the future of social media in general, because it's actually verified content. Like, you can verify content, you can verify images, you can verify personalities and your usernames, etc. And all that will be super important, as AI can create almost anything for you in seconds. And you see a lot of fake content on the internet. It'll be interesting to see how search engines respond to that too, because there's going to be a lot of content that's AI generated, just stuffed into Google, and Google's going to have to figure out a way to filter that information so that it's always accurate.
Yeah, I wanted to share another quote that we saw following that announcement, which was from Alan Henna, who's the co-founder of Web3 firm Earth Labs. He said that Meta was scrapping the idea because it realized it couldn't exploit creators on a public crypto network, which I don't think is a terrible take. So if Zuck can find his own way to monetize it on his own without having it kind of be a public ledger, he will probably do it there.
Well, what was the original suggested marketplace fee for Meta? Was it like 40% or something?
Yeah, kind of out of touch with what we're used to. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if Instagram comes back there, or what they end up implementing, where they head. We know they're very big into VR and the metaverse, so I don't think we've seen the last of them. All right, let's move on to the final segment of the show, which is going to be a little bit fun here, NFT Bracketology. And let me pull up the nifty video here. Here we go.
Love the music.
I was trying to get that college vibe going, you know. So we're going to bring the March Madness excitement to the world of NFTs today. The tournament is starting this week. Everyone's in the spirit of creating brackets. So what better time than to do one for the NFT space? And shout out to one of our readers, NFT Shark, who created and shared a bracket of our Lucky Trader power rankings, which you can find on our site. So we're going to be using that one for the draft here, or the bracket fill out. So today we have a lineup of NFT collections. They're ready to tip off. They're ready to battle it out. NFT tournament. We're going to find one winner, and we're going to keep it very vague. So I'm not going to give you guys any guidance on what we're looking for in terms of the best. It's just personal preference, what we're feeling in the market. So we're going to get this started. I'm going to pull up, share my screen here. It was surprisingly difficult to find a way to do this. Maybe I'm not savvy with Adobe Acrobat and filling stuff out. But I found a site, which is a PDF filler. So we're going to go through bracket by bracket. I'm going to have each of you take a section of the bracket, and we're going to just do the first round this time because it might take a while to do the full thing. So we'll revisit this probably next week. Let me see if I could share my screen here on the PDF filler. So we're going to have Logan take the Northwest bracket, which is the top left here. So I want to get your opinions here. I'm going to read off the seedings here. Some of these are going to be pretty easy. I don't think CryptoPunks is going to be upsetting Party Bear in the first round. So not as many Cinderella stories as we'll hopefully see in the NCAA action this weekend. But I want to get your guys' thoughts. And then if anyone else in the panel has any takes on some of the more close matchups, we can talk it out a little bit. But Logan, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Just let me narrate it through here, and I will type in the winners as you go through it.
Yeah. So punks easily. Decentraland over Boo Bears. Decentraland's been quietly, they keep pumping stuff. I'm not sure how many users or like people are actually doing metaverse stuff, whatever. Incomplete Control. That's a Tyler Hobbs, right? Or is that Cherniak? It's Hobbs, right? Yeah, definitely Incomplete Control. Upset Alert Singularity over Top Shot.
Egregious.
Bad take.
Top
Ooh.
Shot's so bad.
I'm bad for Top Shot. Wow.
My pet
On
Hooligan
a
was
basketball
women.
bracket too. Come on, dude.
I know.
Just rubbing salt in the wound.
I'm gonna skip this World of Women one. I want to think about it for a second longer. Pudgies for sure. Killabears over Unigrids. Let's stay Killabears. Chromie Squiggles, of course, over Imposters. My God, my pet Hooligan versus World of Women. That's not me, right? Yeah.
Oh, are we did I go too far here?
Yeah, we're back at 1. I think Mutant Ape
Okay.
is
So,
one again.
Yeah, Mutant Apes
Oh,
is one
boy.
there. So the last one for you is the World of Women versus My Pet Hooligan.
Can I just say it's WoW? I mean, it's just obviously WoW.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, they
what
actually
doing?
changed it to WoW, right? I just don't know enough about My Pet Hooligan aside from the fact that Carson invested in it, right, a bunch. But I've seen like actual good stuff, I believe, about My Pet Hooligan. So I'm gonna go WoW. You can send Squiggles through. You can send Pudgies through.
We're only doing the first round, man.
Through.
We're only doing the first round. We're gonna revisit that later. Yeah.
I'm giving away too much. Okay, only upset really was Singularity over Top Shot.
Yeah, the NFT projects need time to rest after the first round. You know, we can't just go back to back here. So we'll move on to the Southwest, which is going to be Tyler. So if you want to take us through your picks here.
Yeah, let's do it. Mutant Apes, easy win for the 1 seed there against Screens. MFers versus Cryptos, an amazing first round match. I got to go MFers. Sorry to the Toads. Those are not catching any love right now. I'm going to pile on with my MFers pick. On-Chain Monkeys are my sleeper to maybe win the whole bracket easily, making it pass through Adidas in the first round. Proof versus Artifact Animus Egg. I mean, there's not a whole lot that Proof's going to be able to beat right now, but they can probably beat the eggs. So we'll go with Proof. Creeps Genesis versus Blitmap. This one, a coin toss to me. Don't know much about either, but Creeps will be my pick.
Blitmap.
Other Deed versus Loot. Other Deed clearly the strongest, one of the strongest in the bracket. They might be a favorite to go through. Murakami Flowers versus GCG. I wouldn't take GCG against anyone in this bracket at this point. So Murakami Flowers, easy W there. And then Ringers versus the PG Genesis. Got to take Dimitri Cherniak in the Ringers there. So I guess I don't have too many upsets, but I think I've got more upsets coming in Sweet 16 and Elite 8, but we can save those.
The MF Cryptodes. I'm sorry. MF versus Cryptodes is like the best matchup possible. Let's just
I was going to say that. I was going to say about the same thing. I think the MFers versus Cryptodes is one of the most compelling matchups we saw in the first round there.
Yeah, that's a double overtime buzzer beater.
I also, On-Chain Monkey really had a breeze of a first round matchup against Adidas Originals. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's an easy matchup. And then Other Deed versus Loot. I mean, that had to be like a extreme blowout there. Never want to see them in the first round. All right, let's go over to the Northeast over here. So this is going to be me. So Bored Ape Yacht Club versus Robots. Going to be an easy Bored Ape there. I know they're the darlings, the fan favorites of the tournament, and they're the consensus number one. So it's going to be hard to beat the Bored Ape Yacht Club there. CyberKong's Babies versus Invisible Friends. This is an interesting one. I haven't seen Invisible Friends do a whole lot lately. I'm partial to CyberKong's. I used to have a Genesis, so I'm gonna move the Babies to the first round. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a spam call here.
Phoning a friend. First bracket.
Right. Babies here. Nouns versus CyberKong's. Wow, CyberKong's, if I did want to put them past Nouns, I'm not going to, but we could have had a quick possible meetup between the two CyberKong's collections in the same bracket here. So we're going to go Nouns here. Gazers versus 10KTF. Man, I hate losing 10KTF that early because I think they're a top project, but I don't know. I kind of have to go with Gazers here. Curious to hear if anyone has any thoughts on that one. That's a bit of a tough one for me.
I think it's Gazers.
Gazers for sure. All right, maybe I'm too bullish on 10KTF there. We got Terraforms versus Imaginary Ones. That's going to be Terraforms for me. Friends versus the Shiboshis. I don't even know what the Shiboshis are, so I don't know how that got on this list. F Trees versus Zed Run. We're moving Zed Run to the second round.
Zed versus Top Shot would have been a hell of a matchup.
The battle of the 2021s there. And then finally, Azuki versus GM Dao Token. We're going to go an easy Azuki win there. I think Azuki is probably a sleeper. It's going to be an interesting matchup, probably Azuki versus Bored Apes as they get up here. And then Jason.
That's the hardest bracket. Yeah, it was real quick, Gus. That's by far the hardest bracket to get out of. And like, secretly, V-Friends is kind of a sleeping giant, kind of building behind the scenes, getting ahead of some of the rest of the mid-tier PFPs, but they probably aren't going to stand a chance against the rest of the heat in that bracket, though.
This is like the World Cup, what was that called? Like the Group of Death or whatever. This is like you got Bored Apes in here, you got Azuki, you got V-Friends. That's a tough one. And
Nouns.
10KTF might have gone farther in a different bracket, but that's a tough draw there. I gave Jason this one. We got Cool Cats in his section of the bracket, so I specifically gave him this one. Jason, if you want to go through your picks here.
Yeah, can you zoom in a little bit? I actually can't read it. I'm using my laptop. And
how's that? Any better?
If I move in, just ignore my face for a second. But yeah, I mean, it's obviously autoglyphs. Wolfgame is dead. We all know that.
That hurts, man.
Yeah. Forgotten Runes versus a kid called Beast. I'll take Forgotten Runes just because they've been around longer. Cool Cats obviously over Moonbird Oddities. Moonbird's also dead. Doodles versus Mooncats. It's got to be Doodles, but I really want to send Mooncats just to piss Logan off. Potatoes versus Elevated Deconstructions. I'll take the Potatoes.
What a matchup that is.
Meebits, obviously. I mean, anything related to punks has got to send. Sappy Seals. I can't actually read the one below.
The second one is Steady Stack Titans. I don't know where our Lucky Trader Power Rankings are getting some of these projects from. And then
that seems like a scam project, so I'll take the Seals. And then obviously Fidenza.
I'm just going to go ahead and blame Logan since he's the one who uses the power rankings the most here. I don't even see checks by Jack Butcher on here. We got some issues that we might need to work through, but we're going to use this bracket as it is constructed here.
But luckily, Cool Cats gets to destroy Doodles next week. That's going to be fun. I'm talking 100
Cool
to
Cats.
40 Oh, easily.
Cool Cats probably wouldn't have beat anybody else really. That was like in that.
Cool Cats
like middling teams here.
Tight matchup for me, honestly.
Cool Cats versus Doodles is probably one of the most fun matchups we've got going on in the bracket right now.
Jason has a chance to do a full art sweep and then decides to pick the Potatoes over Elevated Deconstructions, one of the most famous art collections.
With a Z. If it was spelled with an S, it wouldn't have happened. But Potatoes with a Z.
I'm bullish on Potatoes, bullish on Meme Land. Sleeping giant in the tournament there, but we'll get back to some more of our tournament picks next week probably here. So we're gonna wrap up. We're gonna call it here. Any closing thoughts? 30 seconds. Anything on your mind, Tyler? What's going on?
We've got a potential bailout stimulus coming next week. Arbitrum airdrop. Breaking news today. God, we need it. Maybe it's going to turn things around. It seems like every NFT degen I know is getting 5,000 to 10,000 tokens. So this is going to be a stimulus. We'll see if they pump it back into the market or sit on the sidelines counting the change this time around.
Jason, I'm hoping that you're going to talk about GPT-4 because I know that's been a big topic this week. But if you have anything else on your mind, go ahead.
I don't have anything to say about GPT-4. I've been using it the last couple of days. It seems cool, but still trying to figure it out. Talk about it more next week. What I want to say for this week is I know Logan is medium bored. I'm not bored at all, and I want Logan to be highly bored. Can we please calm down for 1 week? Just no bank failures, no depeggings. Don't send all the projects down 40%. Just one stable week, and then you can return to doing whatever you want to do.
Sorry, Jason, but instability's coming. Did you guys see the Lucky Ducky trailer that dropped this week? Two big trailers for me personally this week. FIWO World Humanoids, Lucky Ducky teasing eggs and the teasers. You should all check them both out. A lot of fun from two really great artists. No bias here, of course. That's my big thing to pay attention to.
The FIWO humanoids there are going to live in my nightmares forever. I don't like those. They're scary. But that's our show for the week. If you like this content, want more of our hot takes, make sure you check out the Roundtable article we posted yesterday. We post it every week. We hash out some of the same topics and more here. Check out Tyler, myself, and sometimes Logan on The Lucky Lead every morning on Twitter at 10 a.m. Eastern or in podcast form after. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, guys, and we are out.